You are now part of a social experiment.
See now where my limit is. Only got no ohs.
I'm guessing that there's some emotion and spiritual connection that might come along with
Absolutely.
with this type
Absolutely.
of work. So
Absolutely.
can you talk about like what it has been for you and some of the people that are part of this in regards to, you know, pretty much discovering some new pieces of Black history and also kind of putting some things together that we haven't learned about in ever, pretty much.
Well, you know, it goes back to, you know, whether we want to know history, you know, like my mother's 101. And I would ask her about, you know, the family. She said, I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about, you know, so a lot of it, you know, some of that history that could have been voiced, you know, a lot of times our ancestors, and I'm talking about my mother, they don't want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But it needs to be talked about. Again, you know, if your listeners are listening, and if they're watching and listening to the news, right, history is trying to be repeat itself, right? They're doing it in a different way. Right, they are busing migrants up and down. That's another part of the diaspora. They're not coming here voluntarily. Up in New York,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
right? A lot of them are not coming. So that's another diaspora, right? Just a modern day one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So my point to all that is it is truly emotional, right? The very first slave ship that was ever documented is called, and like I said, you need to interview Dr. Jose Jones, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'll tell you how to do. How to get in touch with him. But he did the Henrietta Marie. Okay, so for the readers who don't know about the Henrietta Marie, okay, there's a gentleman named Mel Fisher. Mel Fisher was the most well-known salvager ever, probably, and so and in the documentary, the Guerrero Project,
Mm-hmm.
it's not only a story of the Guerrero, but it's a story of the relationship or the differences of views between archaeologists and salvagers, right? And prior to this documentary, I was on the side of the salvagers because I want to see it, man. Bring it up so we can see it. But salvagers go about it a different way, right? They will destroy the ocean to get to whatever they want, as opposed to, you know, finding an easier way to bring it up. They don't care, right? And so thus everything gets destroyed. It's not an ocean. I'm an advocate of the oceans, right? So things get so the bottom line was the most famous was Mel Fisher. Mel Fisher was looking for a Spanish galleon. Spanish galleon is called the Atocha. He spent his entire life looking for it, right? And in 1982, I don't remember exactly, he found it, right? And to this date, they brought up almost $500 million in gold and silver, right?
Wow.
Yeah. But again, he found this ship called the Henrietta Marie, right? And they didn't know what it was, but they knew it was a slave ship. And they knew there was nothing on it of value to him, so he didn't do anything with it. But one of his captains, a couple years later, went back, right? Again, as your daughter was alluding to, has anybody found something of valuable? What they do is they find the ship's bell, and the bell says Henrietta Marie, right?
Wow.
And so, again, they go back to England because the English did good records, right?
Yes,
And they
sir.
found out the history of the Henrietta Marie. But they found out the Henrietta Marie had no captive Africans on his voyage back. It had dropped off the captive Africans in Cuba and was on its way back to England and got into a storm, right? And sunk. So NABS, National Association of Black Scuba Divers, got wind of it through a gentleman named Corey Malcolm, who is no longer the archaeologist at Mel Fisher. He has moved on, but he presented to them, and they decided to place not only to go dive the ship, but place a monument. There's a monument there at the site.
Right.
Of the Henrietta Marie. I'm sorry, at the site of the Henrietta Marie. Right. All right. So now We've arranged several missions. Occasionally we go out there and we clean the monument, and you get a chance to pay homage to your ancestors. I did a documentary where I took young people on a voyage, see if they learned about the history, and then we ended the voyage with a dive on the Henry Marie. Right. So at the site now is the monument, and there's some beads there. There's a cannon there, right? But the hull of the ship is covered in sand. That's how you preserve it, right? So there's not a lot there now. But a lot of people go for the spiritual aspect of it because it is even though there was no captive Africans on there at the time, it is uh, um, an artifact, a huge artifact of what our ancestors went through. Was good. So you get a sense of feeling, right? There's a gentleman, Kamal Siddiqui, who was the lead instructor with DWP. He's been on more slave wrecks than I have. Right? I've only been on 3. He's been on 5. There's only been 5, and he's been on. I think he's been on all 5 of them. And he'll tell you about the spiritual connection. I don't know if you religious know. The last one that was just found, it's called the Catilda.
Yes, sir.
It's in Mobile, right? Which we're a big part of. In fact, there's an article. We're going to write an article about it next month. But my point to all that is, there is a spiritual feeling that comes out of it. Maybe there's a connection to your ancestors. If you have that kind of imagination, if you don't, it's just another dive. Right? It's a spiritual connection to our ancestors and what they've gone through and what we have gone through and what we continue to go through.
Yes, sir. I know you just talked about the Quatilda. A lot of people might not be familiar with that one, but that is the last known ship to have come back here, as far as people know, and there are still descendants here from the Quatilda.
In Africa town, yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So what have you guys learned about the Quatilda?
Well, I'm not a big part of that, but I can tell you. So a couple of things we're doing with the descendants and in Africa town. That the folks down there are very vocal about keeping the history. It's a wonderful, it's a great. I don't know if anybody saw. There's another documentary on Netflix called The Descendants, which features Kamal Siddiqui, and it talks about the Africa town and what they went through or what they're going through. So we continue to play a part in that. We're teaching the young people there to dive, scuba dive, so they can actually go and dive the Catilda. Right, you can't. So and to be a part and research the history. So they've been very welcoming, right? The descendants of, and so it's in Mobile, Alabama. For your listeners, you don't know anything about it. The Catilda was supposedly the last slave ship. We're not 1,000% sure, but they say it is. And there was a white gentleman, a European gentleman, so to speak. European. That's what we call them now. There was a European gentleman who placed a bet that he could bring a certain amount of Africans, because this is not 18, this is after the Civil War, right? That he could bring these captive Africans and sneak them into the Americas without being found. And he did. And then, but some of the descendants are still there in Mobile in Africa Town. They call it Africa Town. It's actually a city near Mobile. And subsequently what he did was he burnt the boat, but in the harbor somewhere. So I haven't been to the site, so that they burned the boat, but it didn't fully burn. So a couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago, DWP along with Search found the wreck. Right? They were able to, through the process of archaeology, determine that it is the Catilda. Oh, there's an effort there. The problem is they're talking about to preserve the wreck. The African town people want to bring the wreck up and put it in a museum, right? But that's millions of dollars, right? So they haven't made a decision, as far as I know, on what to do with the ship. But the wreck is there.
Right. Got you. All right. So in Mozambique, I know you guys do a lot of work too, like just connecting with different people in the continent and their experiences, learning their experience and their viewpoints and things like that. And in Mozambique, you guys found someone that asked you to take a basket and put it.
Okay. So that it has to do with the San Jose.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So again, I wasn't there, right? But I can tell you what happened. Kamal Siddiqui, who you probably need to interview.
You giving me a list, man. I got a lot of homework.
And Kamal is you really, I don't know what you're doing for Black History Month, but you need to see if you can get him. You can get him. You have to tell me.
Yes,
You want.
it's done. It's done. Yep.
Yeah. Kamal was a big part of that. So, again, I was telling you, I was on the record of San Jose. It's pronounced differently, but that's the only way I can pronounce it. Right. But when I was there, it was not, they hadn't identified it, but now they have identified it. And it's the ship that's in the African American Museum in Washington, D.C. And for your listeners, for your viewers, my picture's in there also.
Ooh, making history, yes, sir.
Making history, yeah. So I'm on level 2, right? You'll see me, and I'm surrounded by all these beautiful ladies. And then I'm gonna give you a little backdrop on it just quickly. And I know I'm getting off topic here.
No, this is important. This is important.
My photograph is in there. So it's just me and all these women. That's just like 8 women, right? And the reason why the photograph is there, the reason why the photograph was taking place, I was on a search for the Guerrero again. This is another one of our searches. We were documenting a site, and I'm sitting on the back of this boat. I said, man, look at all these dynamic women I got here, ladies, sisters. So I said, let's go take this photograph. So we go to the front of the boat. A partner of mine, he's photographing. His name is Vanna Rogers. He is the professor at Fisk University. He just happened to be on there. I said, Vanna, take this photograph. So it's me and I think it's 8 of us, 8 ladies. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. So I don't even know how the museum got the photograph, right? But 2 years later, I get a call from a friend of mine, right? And she said, Ken, did you know your photograph was in this museum? I said, no. So that's my only claim to fame. So I brag about that all the time. But yes, that picture has done a lot for the Diamond with Purple. Not only that, there's an exhibit about DWP on level 2 in the museum. I don't, so after 10 years, they'll take it down. So I know we're getting to that point where it's going to come down, because I don't know, the museum is like in this 8th year, maybe.
Right.
But after 10 years, it'll come down. So
I definitely I haven't been there yet. I gotta go there. Just
better go
definitely for that.
You ain't gonna see it.
Yes,
but
sir.
I wish but I could. But yeah, so it's in there. So it does talk about the San Jose. In fact, if you go all the way down to the bottom, when they talk about slavery, the San Jose is featured.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
go
ahead.
They researched the San Jose to find out that it started in Upper Mozambique. Mm-hmm. So if you look at that side of Africa, right, when they were doing the African Diaspora, the 400 years of enslavement that some of your readers don't believe in, right? It started in Mozambique, right, and then would go around, come down, and then go around the Cape and make its way to where its destination in the Caribbean, Barbados. I don't know where they were going. Mm-hmm. But when they were coming down to the Cape, right, I don't know, you ever been to South Africa?
Not yet. It's on the bucket list.
Okay. So this is it's in Cape Town, right? And if you ever go, right, you can go to the top. There's a mountain called Table Mountain. You can go to the top of Table Mountain, and you can actually see you can't see the slave ship, but you can see where it's sunk, and it's in a cove, right? So the assumption is that the ship went into the cove to avoid a storm, but that area is rocky, so it must have been thrown up against the rocks, and a lot of them died. I don't remember the exact figure, right? But a lot of them died at that site, because even though they could have, if you could swim, you could probably swim the shore. It is a very volatile area, extremely volatile, because of the rocks and the ocean and the currents. Mm-hmm. But they brought it to the attention of the folks in Mozambique that's where the shit came from.
So every day I'm going hard. I'm talking business, bank accounts, and credit cards. And somehow we defeat the odds and making sure that no one starves illegal. All you had to